So what I tell people all the time is that often what happens is you, even as a professional, when you're doing it for yourself, you feel like, am I making this up? Am I imagining it? Am I afraid of the outcome if I go this way or that way? So I tell people to use tools. You can use cards, you can use pendulums, you can use tools that will help you to validate what you're getting, the information that you're getting. So it doesn't have to feel like it is a imaginative thing or something that you're creating out of fear or out of hope or out of love or out of distrust or any of those different things. It can feel more that it gets validated because you're using a tool that's kind of an external thing.
2, 1, 0.
Hello and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Today we're going to talk about intuition. Intuition is your natural birthright. Developing and leveraging it opens door to miracles in your life. It gives you clarity in decision making, paves the way to healing, and connects you with your psychic abilities. Melanie Barnum is a professional psychic medium, international author, life coach, and hypnotist practicing over 20 years. Her sole intention is to joyfully help others connect to their gifts, understand who they are, discover their greatness, and heal themselves through clarity and wisdom. In this episode, Melanie shares her story of how she was called into the psychic coaching realm. She talks about the differences between intuition and being psychic, some practical tips on listening to your intuition, numbers, animal communication, past life regression, and so much more. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hey, Melanie, welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Melanie, you are a professional psychic medium, international author, life coach, a hypnotherapist, and you do this over 20 years. You also do private readings, spiritual sessions, workshops, and more. And you have 8 books, including Intuition at Work and Psychic Symbol Oracle Cards. That's a very impressive list. How did you discover your passion to this psychic slash coaching realm?
So one day, probably about 23, 24 years ago, I felt like I was hit over the head and I literally heard the words, "You have to do this work now." And immediately I knew what they were talking about. I knew what it was, but I didn't believe it. And I said, absolutely not. You know, I was the controller of a company. I was a new mom. Um, there was no way I was going to do it, but I knew what it meant and I knew that I had to do it. And so I just set out to start to learn everything I possibly could because I was a very kind of rational person. I was an accountant.
Oh my God.
So there's no way I'm just gonna like hang a shingle that says psychic and start doing readings for people. Like I have to practice. So I just started, doing classes and reading and meeting people. And I literally did workshops with people that are famous psychics. And then I did workshops with people that, others have maybe never heard of. And I just kept studying and practicing. And I realized that, yeah, I was actually pretty good at it. And it brought me like, I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about it because it brought me so much happiness and joy to be able to do this for other people. And I started giving away readings for free for a few years. I did that. And I realized that this really is my calling and I'm going to do it. And so I started doing it and I love it still.
And what was the reaction of your very left brain friends to you doing this?
Well, it's funny, nobody ever really said, "You're crazy. What are you doing?" But everybody was kind of like, okay, do whatever, do what you got to do. And most of my friends were pretty open to it. My family was open. My husband was very supportive. My sister and my brother, very open and very supportive. And, I think our whole family has been psychic our whole lives. We've been very intuitive. We just never realized that it was psychic on that level.
All right. And So what's the difference between being really intuitive to being a psychic? Is it the same thing? Is it two different things?
So intuition, this is how I always explain it. Intuition is something that we're all born with. We all have, right? It's our natural birthright. Not everybody uses it as much as others, but we all have it. So we all have, a cop has a hunch, a mother has a hunch, about their child. There's all these different things that we attribute to hunches or feelings, but they're really intuitive impressions that we're getting. And more often than not, we don't even recognize that it's our intuition that we're using. So that's something that everybody has. We use it all the time. Being psychic or doing psychic readings goes a little bit deeper. So it's more about being able to connect for other people, being able to kind of connect to other people, for other people. And what I always say is that everybody can play a key on a piano, but not everybody's going to be Beethoven or Mozart. So, we can all do it because we're all intuitive. And I just got goosebumps again. To me, that's validation when I get goosebumps like that. So we're all intuitive. We all have that intuition. It's just whether or not we take it to that next level and do psychic things or psychic readings for others. So everybody, again, has a sense of intuition. We're all born with it. Whether you take it to that next step or not is up to you.
So when you heard that voice that said, come on, let's do it. I mean, how did you hear it? Did you see it? Did you see a guide?
So
What
I
was it
didn't
like?
see anybody. Yeah, I didn't see anybody at the time when it actually happened. I literally was holding my brand new baby and I was standing in my dining room, and all I can tell you is that it felt like I was hit over the head by like just a very light club. I don't know how else to say it. I know that sounds crazy, but it didn't hurt, but it was meant to kind of get my attention. And I just heard the words, you have to do this work now.
Right.
So
I feel like,
immediately,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, immediately I knew what they were talking about. And when I say they, I think it's, my guides. It was my guides then, and I still get information from my guides now.
And when you get the information, do you hear voices? Is it a knowingness? What is it like for you?
So for me, it's a little bit of everything. I get information mostly symbolically. So I'll hear things, I'll see things, I'll feel things. And I don't even recognize so much anymore how I'm receiving the information, unless somebody like you asks me, how do you get this information? Because for me, it kind of happens through all of my different psychic senses. So I hear things, I see things, I feel things, I know things. It's all kind of a mishmash.
And does it bother you sometimes that you know so much? And have you ever thought, oh, I wish I didn't know so much about this person? Because sometimes ignorance is bliss.
You're absolutely right. I actually kind of turn it off. So usually if I'm not working, I turn it off because I don't want to walk through the grocery store and know things about people. But if I'm meeting somebody new, or if I'm introduced to somebody, it's kind of an automatic. You get a feeling, or I get a vibe about them right away. It's not that I know that their deceased loved one is there, or it's not necessarily that I know, what they do for a living unless I tune into them. So, I don't have to worry as much about being overloaded usually, which is good.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
And do they develop their psychic abilities as well?
Yes and no. They both realize that they are very intuitive and they get a lot of psychic hits. But they're in my family, so they're introduced to it all the time. They're exposed to it. They understand it, but they don't necessarily practice as psychics now.
I guess kids that they grow up in an environment with such an influence, I guess they will become way more intuitive and psychic themselves eventually.
Well, it's what I tell them. It's what I tell them all the time, that I do this for other people. I'm a professional psychic. I've been doing this for a long time, but I get intuitive sparks, intuitive hits for me, and I ignore them. So I tell them all the time, it's up to you. You can choose what you want to do with it. You can choose to pay attention to your intuition and use your intuition on a regular basis, or you can ignore it and see where that gets you. So, as simple things like, I go to the grocery store to buy groceries and I walk past the milk and I think, oh, I should grab some milk. And then I say, no, I had, half a gallon before I left, and I get home and there's no milk left. And everybody says, oh, why didn't you get more milk? So it's those little things that are always there. And it's whether or not you actually utilize your intuition or not that can get you to that next level. And it's the same for my kids. My kids go through it too.
When something major happens and you have to make a decision, how do you find the difference between fear-based thoughts to actually the voice of your intuition?
So like I said,
it's easier to practice listening to your intuition on the little things, but when something major happens and stress or fear is involved, it's harder.
It definitely can be harder if you are in that type of a situation. So what I tell people all the time is that often what happens is you, even as a professional, when you're doing it for yourself, you feel like, am I making this up? Am I imagining it? Am I afraid of the outcome if I go this way or that way? So I tell people to use tools. You can use cards. You can use pendulums. You can use tools that will help you to validate what you're getting, the information that you're getting. So it doesn't have to feel like it is a imaginative thing or something that you're creating out of fear or out of hope or out of love or out of distrust or any of those different things. It can feel more that it gets validated because you're using a tool that's kind of an external thing.
Right. And how do you use your intuition? How do you connect to it and learn to increase the connection to your intuition? I guess that was my question.
So when people ask me that, the first thing I say is practice. And you can practice on your own by doing exercises that are online or exercises out of a book. It's one of the best possible things that you can do. So in all of my books, there's exercises to help you increase your awareness. And, a ton of other people, they have books as well. The reason that I say do it that way and not just, start from scratch is because there's so many different ways to tap into your intuition. As you were asking me before, how do you do it? Do you see it? Do you feel it? Do you hear it?
Right.
And some people are more prevalent with their clairvoyance or their clear sight. Some people have more of a clairaudient connection, so they hear things more. Some people feel things, that clairsentient. So if you wanted to try and connect to your intuition, you could do a little test for yourself and go out and drive around, obviously depending on where you live, but go out and take a ride and say, you know what, I want to end up at a place that has a beautiful vista that I can look at or a beautiful park that I can be at, but go somewhere where you've never been. And then just start listening to your intuition. Pay attention to whether you hear that you should turn left or hear that you should turn right, whether you feel pulled in one direction or the other, whether you see something and so you can look for a sign, like an external sign, because you just saw, this big rock in your mind. So now you can turn at that rock. So there's different ways to kind of test it. And, you can do the same thing at home in a different way. You can say, okay, I want to know, I want to test my sight or my hearing, my clairvoyance or my clairaudience. So I want to see before I turn on the TV, what image is going to be on the TV as soon as I turn it on. What am I going to hear as soon as I turn it on? It used to be that you could practice using your telephone. You could pick it up, when it rings and you don't know who's on the other line, but now everybody knows who's on the other line. You can see it. So you can say now before your telephone rings, who's going to call me next or who's going to text me next or what's the next notification I'll get on my cell phone. So there's a lot of different ways that you can practice. And those ways, all the ways that I was just talking about, can give you validation as you go. And even though some people believe that you don't need validation, I believe that you absolutely do need validation because it helps you to know whether you're right or you're wrong, to help you to understand how to connect and how to interpret the messages that you're getting or the symbolic information that you're getting.
Right. Do you believe in angel numbers?
To an extent, I think that I definitely think that there's angels out there. I think that there's angel numbers, but I do think that okay. So I'll use this as an example. I think that people notice them more because we're kind of tuned in to notice it more. And that doesn't mean that it's not real. It just means that we notice them more. So if you're driving down the street and you see a license plate that says, happy. You're going to notice that license plate, but you didn't notice the 5 license plates that you saw that went by you that were just normal numbers and letters.
Right.
But you noticed happy because it stood out. And I believe that a lot of times people notice the angel numbers or the, psychic numbers because they stand out. And so I think that, yes, there's a reason for that. But I don't think that it's always like a huge thing. I think that it's just, they're saying, acknowledge it and become aware. And your awareness is what makes more happen. It makes more of the angelic realm kind of come around. It makes more of your intuition rise up because you're becoming aware of the signs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is our reticular activating system. If you look for red, you'll find it everywhere. If you buy a new car, you'll see it everywhere.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's sometimes I battle my logical brain and my more creative side of my brain. Like they battle, like, oh, you saw it. No, it's just a number. Like, is that real? Is that not real? And I find myself doubting my psychic abilities, but actually lately I feel like my psychic abilities are really, really increasing. For example, I was with my friend came over and we were in our backyard. We live on a lake, and
that's funny. I was seeing water all around you, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And so she had this necklace with 2 pendants, and I was like, oh, that's pretty. And she's like, oh, that's from my grandma, that's from my grandpa. And then she was kind of like, well, they're both dead. And then I saw 4 ducks there, and I'm giving them name, like jokingly, Jojo, Jacqueline, da 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 da. And she looks at me and she's a little pale. I'm like, what happened? She said, well, those were the names of my grandparents, and Jojo was my nickname when I was a kid. I was like, whoa, how did that happen? That's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, a lot of things like that happen. Animal communication. We rescued a duckling, and I really wanna give him to like an animal sanctuary, but I don't know if it's going to survive there, so we don't really know what to do with it. Anyways, it is at our home and in the backyard for now. And we were out yesterday, and like I keep like hearing him like come back. Like I hear him in my I saw a vision of him. It was really intense, and that happened twice yesterday. Once before I wake up, it almost like calling me to wake up, and then when I was traveling. So what do you think about that? Like, why is that happening, and how do we increase those abilities? Like when it's like,
well, I have to ask you first, did you go back to the duck? Did you go check him out, make sure he was okay?
Yeah, of course. He just wanted some DLC.
Yeah.
Ducks are
So
very
you have that,
by the way, and they're very affectionate.
yeah.
And they're very messy.
So, I mean, the way that you can increase it more is to just allow it and recognize it. The more you start to recognize that that's what it actually is, that it's not just your imagination, or it's not just you thinking about the duck or thinking about whatever it is that we're talking about, the more that you start to practice that and start to use that, the better off you are. But one of the things that you could do is, if you're having that vision or that thought or that feeling or that sound that you're hearing the duck saying, come back,
Mm-hmm.
ask why.
Uh-huh.
Why?
So actually
So
to
take
be in
it kind of,
conversation with it. Huh.
right. So
Okay.
kind of take it to that next level. And, you may not get an answer right away, or you may hear something, or you may just see like a flash of a image or a symbol, or, whatever it may be. You may not get a full-on conversation like we're having right now. And usually people won't. And if you do, then that usually means that you're kind of putting some of your imagination into it. And that's okay, because it may just be the way that you're bringing through the messages. So next time if something like that happens, ask why. Why do I need to come back? What's going on? Are you okay?
Do you communicate with animals as well?
Sometimes, it's funny. We have a dog right now. We've always had dogs and cats, and we have a chocolate lab, Moby, and he is amazing and fantastic. But every once in a while, he'll look at me, and I just know that he either needs food, or he needs love, or he needs to go out. And he's not doing anything other than the way that he looks at me, and I know that he's talking to me. Like
Wow.
there's no doubt, But beyond that, I don't usually talk to animals unless somebody asks me, "Hey, can you figure out what's wrong with my animal?" And then, I'll tune in briefly and kind of get their energy more than the communication.
Yeah. I also had an experience with a blue crab. There was a season where like we had lots of blue crabs around, and we were just outside the door, and there was this blue crab there for like 30 minutes, just standing there with the I don't know how do you call it, the hands of the crab.
The
Like
claw,
the, how do you call it?
claws.
Claws, yeah. So the claws were up, and he was like just in the defense mode. And I was like, wow, this little thing is really stressed out. So I just looked at it, and I was in the zone, I guess. And I was like, listen, you're fine. We're not gonna do anything. You can relax now. And as I was thinking that, he just went after 30 minutes of holding his arms. As I was doing that, he went like "Meow," claws down very slowly. It was very dramatic. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool. So I'm thinking, you said tune in. It would be cool to do it whenever I want, not when I'm in the zone or when something weird happens, like out of the blue. How do you fine tune it so you can actually do it? On
So
you just whatever animal I see or knowledge I want to receive, I just ask and I know exactly what to do or say or act.
Well, I want to touch on very quickly the crab bringing their claws down when you were telling him it's okay, we're not going to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
Animals are very instinctual and they're very intuitive to begin with. So they are kind of wide open because, traditionally and historically, they've always had to use their intuition to keep them alive.
Huh.
So they are already wide open.
Right.
So in order to practice with them, in order to practice with the animals, you just have to start talking to them intuitively. Ask permission to do this. And start off very simply. So you don't have to say, okay, we need to have a conversation. Let's go back and forth and, talk about the weather. But you can ask a simple question. Are you happy? Do you feel healthy?
Huh.
Is there, do you ask just a very simple question and then see what you feel? Not necessarily that you're going to hear something or you're going to see something, but see how you feel. If you're asking a question like, do you feel healthy? And all of a sudden you yourself feel like you're going to vomit, then no, they're not feeling so healthy. You're taking on their energy.
Mm-hmm.
Ask, are you happy? And if all of a sudden you want to cry, again, not so much. They're not so happy. But if you ask, are you happy? And then they start dancing around the room, they're showing you that they're happy. And you can do this internally. You don't have to say it out loud. You ask internally so that you know that you're using your intuitive connection. You know that you're connecting to them in a different way. So once you start to do things like that, it becomes easier to connect. Because like I said, animals instinctively know to use their intuition. They don't know what it is. They haven't been shut down from using it, but they just use it because they've always had to historically to protect themselves and to stay alive and to hunt. It's not like they can just go to a grocery store. So animals have it. We just need to tune into them. And the easiest way is just start doing it and ask them questions and pay attention to how it feels in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to whether it makes you feel happy, whether it makes you feel sad, whether it makes you feel, like you are connecting, whether it makes you feel like they're giving you an answer to something.
Right.
And you might be using your imagination in the beginning, but then you'll start to really, realize the more you practice, you'll start to understand that you are connecting.
Yeah. I believe I am. I just
Well, it
need
definitely
to.
sounds like you are.
I hope so. Um, Also, intuition or psychic abilities as a mom, did it ever happen to you that doctor said something about your kid's condition and you were like, we're doing something different?
Absolutely. And
Tell me more about that.
I think I wrote about it in my first book. So, I was talking about signs and about paying attention to kind of the signs. So the way I describe things, my first book is called The Book of Psychic Symbols, Interpreting Intuitive Messages. And in that book, I talk a lot about symbolic information, like I've been stating, throughout this whole conversation with you. And symbolic information is things that you receive in your mind. It's something that you see in your mind's eye or you hear it inside. It's not something that is external. Signs, on the other hand, are external. They're things that are tangible, that we can touch, that we can see with our eyes externally, physically. It could be it could be a number, like an angel number, like you were talking about earlier. Like, okay, if I see 444, that's going to be a great day for me, or that's going to be a good sign for me to do this kind of thing. So I had taken my baby, my second child, my daughter, I had taken her to the doctors because she kept getting ear infections. And she was young and she was still nursing. I was nursing her. And they said, she just keeps getting chronic ear infections. She needs to have tubes put in. We need to do some surgery for her ears. And I said, no. And they were like, what do you mean, no? Like, she's getting chronic ear infections. We need to put tubes in. Now, I'm not knocking anybody that did tubes for their kids. If you do what you feel is best for your child, for sure. But I said, no, I'm not doing it. And I said, she is allergic to dairy. And that's what's giving her ear infections. And they said, no, she's not. Dairy and ear infections have no connection whatsoever. And I said, you know what? My gut is telling me she's allergic to dairy. And they were like, no, you have to do tubes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go home and I'm going to think about it for a couple of days. I'll come back. So, I thought about it for a couple of days. I talked to my husband and he pretty much said, do what you need to do. Like, you decide what to do. And she was strictly just nursing them. So I stayed off dairy for those couple of days. And meanwhile, she was still recovering from an ear infection. So there was no real way to know, at that point, whether I was right, using my intuition, whether I was right or not. So I said, I need a sign. Like, I was on my way to the doctor's office and it was either going to be a yay or nay, a yes or a no to the tubes. And I said, I need a sign. Like, I need my angels to kind of come in and help me because I don't want to screw my daughter up by not doing this. But I also don't want her to have surgery if she doesn't need to have surgery. And so I said, I know in my heart, and I'm getting goosebumps again. So I said, I know in my heart, like I just know she does not need tubes, and I know it's dairy. And I said, but I need a sign to confirm that, please. Like, my angels need to help me. And I'm driving down the road, and close to the doctor's office, we stop at a stoplight. And I said, I need a sign for my angels, please. And I look ahead of me, and the car right ahead of me has a bumper sticker that says, your angels are with you.
Wow.
And it said something else little under that. I can never remember, and I'm getting goosebumps on my head now. It feels like my head is hair standing straight up. My arms are all goosebumpy. And that's total validation. I feel like my face is popping out with goosebumps everywhere. And I knew. I went into the doctor's office and I said, nope, she's allergic to dairy. We're not doing tubes. And sure enough, I stopped having dairy while I was nursing her. Fine. No more ear infections.
Wow.
Yeah. And, they say medically, they've always said there's no connection from dairy to ear infections. And I said, no, you're wrong. Like, there's no way. So yeah, I've definitely used my intuition for my kids before with something like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had something similar like that when I was in the hospital and my baby was born. Um, and he was so agitated and I couldn't soothe him. And I told them, like, I can't soothe my baby's crying a lot. And they're like, oh, he's just, it just, your anxiety is rubbing on him. And then I nursed him and he was just on me for forever. And and then they're like, oh, he's just using you as a human pacifier. I'm like, are you kidding me? He was just born yesterday. A human, like those words they're saying, like, okay, they're on the one hand, very grateful for all the nurses and the doctors, and I couldn't
Of
have
course.
this birth without them for sure. Because I had to go through a C-section. On the other hand, like sometimes the bedside mannerism and the thing that you say to a woman who just gave birth that is already in a state of pain and almost like a trance state, and subconscious mind is so open to whatever you're telling her, like, guys, be mindful with what you were telling, like somebody who just had a baby and had trauma, and I felt like a horrible mom. Like I can't do anything for him. And then I'm holding him and I feel like he's hot. And I'm like, he's hot. Check him. And they check and she's like, oh, he's fine. And she checks him and she's like, oh yeah, he's got low grade fever. And then they did blood sugar test and his blood sugar was 20 out of 50. Super, super low, like dangerously low. And now we had like a whole night of like helping him recover. But that moment was the greatest validation for me as a mom to trust myself first, even though sometimes I still struggle with it.
Of
Because
course.
every time you talk to somebody who is supposed to be an expert in their field, you give them all the credit. It's just we are so conditioned to do that, to give other people our power because they have a costume on, an outfit, a degree, a certificate, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, what I tell people all the time is when you go to the doctors or you have something medically going on with yourself or your child, tune into yourself, tune into your child, figure out how you feel about it. And I'm not knocking doctors and nurses either. My mom was a
Yeah, yeah.
critical care nurse her
No, I'm not
her whole
knocking
life.
them down. I'm just saying, like
Yeah,
in that case,
of course. You have to, this is your life. This is your child. This is you. It's the doctors and the nurses are there and they're trying to help everybody.
right. It's overwhelmed.
And they're not there for 24/7. They're not there with you the whole time. You're the one that's there. You're the one that's tuning into your intuition when it has to do with you or when it has to do with your child. So, actually, when people come and they say, what should I do medically? I tell them everything that I'm about to tell you, take with a grain of salt. Like you still have to listen to your own intuition, whether I tell you something that I get psychically or not. You have to listen to your own intuition, especially when it's something that important that has to do with your medical stuff or your child. You can't ignore your own sense.
Right.
And whether you are aware of the fact that you're intuitive or not, especially when it comes to your child, like you did, you knew there was something going on. You knew there was something wrong.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily trying to tell you, that you have no idea what you're talking about. But essentially they're saying, I've been doing this forever.
I know
You're
better than
fine.
you.
Your child is fine, and we're relying on not just their education, we're relying on their experience, but they may not have experienced that.
Yeah.
And they may not be ready to take that in, what's going on with you and your child. So absolutely.
I don't know if I was hormonal, but that moment but actually the tone of voice of that specific nurse was very, very judgmental. And it
Yeah,
was like,
I could tell you some stories. So I understand that 100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many topics I wanted to cover today, but we don't have much time, so I'm just gonna go to the next topic. I'm doing hypnotherapy. I do RTT, which is rapid transformation therapy.
Okay.
And you're taking it an extra step into, so I work on this lifetime, but you work on different lifetimes. How do you do that? And can you tell me some fun stories and things that happened?
Sure. So that's called past life regression. So I'm actually a hypnotist. I'm trained, as a hypnotist. So I do hypnosis for all different reasons. But one of the best things to do, one of the funnest things to do, excuse me, is past life regression. And like you said, past life regression is, it does affect this lifetime, but it's going back into other lifetimes. And one thing that I always tell people is, look, I am going to facilitate your own past life regression. I'm not going to tell you who you were, and I'm not going to tell you where you lived or what you did. You're going to tell me, because it's not my experience, it's your experience. But what happens is I'm able to lead people without, without guiding them in one direction or the other. I'm able to lead people through almost like a meditative state. But with hypnosis, as you know, it's kind of like meditation, but it has a goal in mind. So there's a goal to, get back to other past lives. So I've had some people that have come in and said, there's no way this is going to work. And I think I wrote about this also in one of my books, but I had Grace come in. And Grace was like, I'm going to try it, but there's no way. Like, I don't know if I believe in this past life stuff. There's no way it's going to happen. And so we started doing the regression, and essentially it's, like I said, it's hypnosis. So I, kind of get them into that relaxed state. Yeah. And then we start going back in time. And I asked, where she was, if she could look at her hands or her feet, if she had hands or feet, what did they look like? And she proceeded to tell me things as I asked her different questions. And what she told me was that she was in an orphanage in England. Now,
Wow.
she's
now
somebody.
I get goosebumps.
Yeah, I had goosebumps too. So she was in an orphanage in England, like back in the 1800s, I think.
And in my head too.
Yeah, validation. And she described that, she said the name of the road that it was, that the orphanage was on. She described what it looked like. She even, believe she told me the name of the orphanage. She described, there was like a black metal gate and black metal fencing. And she described that, that kind of antique wrought iron fence. And she described that there's a cemetery attached to the orphanage right there. She described that and how it looked. She told me that, again, the time frame that she was there. I think she told me somebody's name. I don't remember whether it was her name or somebody else's name. And then, we brought her back and talked about like all the different stuff that was going on in the orphanage at the time. But we brought her back. And she said, yeah, I was just making that up. Like, I want to go to England. Like, I was just making it up. And I said, all right, well, you can choose to believe it or not believe it. It's totally up to you. I always tell people, like I said, take what happens in here with a grain of salt. Don't just fully trust everything. Go research it. Go look into it. We have the internet now, so it's so much easier. So she leaves my office, and within an hour, she calls me. And she calls me to say that she looked up on the internet and found that there was an orphanage back in the 1800s on that particular road. I'm getting wicked goosebumps everywhere.
Me too. Wow. Like seriously, I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah. Gosh. Yeah, everywhere. So there was an orphanage on that particular road. It looked as she described it, with the wrought iron fence and the cemetery and the orphanage, and it had like a plaque in the front, I remember her saying. And it's not even there anymore.
Wow.
So even if she had visited England, she wouldn't have seen it. So it's not something that she knew, by seeing something physically. It's something that she got because she went back into her past life. And that changed her world. It changed everything about her. She all of a sudden believed. She knew, that this was real. So right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just got on my clock 555 because I wanted to ask a question, and then I got 555. Question for you about me. Do you see any past lives?
So like I said, I don't usually tell people who they were or what they did, but as soon as you ask me that, and only because you're asking me, like I said, normally I do the facilitating. But what I got for you right away, which is very strange, is I saw you doing like work as a witch and with like healing stuff.
Huh. I actually did a past life regression, and I was a witch and I was burned at the stake.
Well, I mean, a lot of us were, for sure. But I see you being a witch, and I'll tell you why I saw you being a witch.
Okay.
Because I got the information symbolically. I literally saw like the stereotypical witch's black hat. So not that you wore that then, but that's how I saw that you were a witch for sure. And then I saw healing herbs. So I feel like you worked with herbs, you worked with like, you know, I don't even know what else to call it, like healing powders. You made like powders, you made like herbs, and you were persecuted, I guess, for what you did because people were afraid of you. So it all kind of comes back around when you were talking about, you know, people kind of not letting you step into your own power. And that's part of your, you know, when we do past life regression, we pull through things that can help us in this lifetime. So part of your help from that past life regression can be the knowledge that, or the awareness that you were persecuted for your power, for stepping into your power. You were a natural healer, a natural witch, somebody that could help others. You weren't like a bad, evil person. You were a good person and you were trying to help. But that gets squashed down a little bit in this lifetime because of the stuff that you went through in previous lifetimes.
That's so cool. Wow. I really want to talk to you more, but I want to be respectful of your time. We might have to talk later as well. I really appreciate your time and your patience because we had some tech problems in the beginning, and I'm glad that we did this this call. And before we say goodbye for now, 2 questions for you. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life, and where can people find you?
So people can find me at melaniebarnum.com or anywhere on social media. Put in Melanie Barnum or Melanie Barnum Psychic, and you'll be able to find me. So my top 3 tips to living a stellar life. Number 1, trust your intuition. Step into it. Use it. Enjoy it. And I just got goosebumps. Again, validation. So maybe number 2, find your greatness. Find your greatness. Look for your greatness. One of my books is called The Steady Way to Greatness, and that is all about stepping into that power, stepping into who you are, who you're meant to be, because that's where you're going to find your happiness. That's also, I write about that in my latest book, Intuition at Work also. So use your intuition, trust it, believe that it's real, step into your power, find your greatness, and appreciate who you are, what's inside of you. And the third thing, and this is interesting because it just came to me, I wasn't even going to say this, but no judgment. So people judge other people and themselves all the time. And it happens without even thinking about it. You look at somebody and you say, oh, you know, they're not any good for me, or, you know, whatever it may be, but you judge them. Oh, her hair is terrible, or, oh, you know, whatever it is, stop the judgment. If you can't look at somebody else without judging them, take a step back and count for 3 seconds and reset so that you can open yourself up to hear what they may want to say to you, because they may have something really important to help you to get through your own life.
Right.
And also, don't judge yourself. Like, stop judging yourself. Stop putting yourself in a position where you're not as good as you want to be, or you're not as powerful or as important as you think you should be. You're exactly where you should be. You're exactly where you need to be. And we all have choices that we can make. And when I say don't judge, I mean, don't judge yourself, because it's you. You're the only one that can move forward with those choices. You're the only one that can move forward in life. So don't judge others or yourself, because all it's going to do is bring you down.
Right.
So use your intuition, step into your greatness, into your power, and don't judge.
Yes. And have a wonderful, stellar life. Well, Melanie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You are awesome. Thank you for your kindness, and thank you for all the knowledge you shared with me and with our listeners today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great.